I had some more camera woes this morning. I did a fairly long video of the layup of the top mold. I'm just doing the outer skin layup currently, but after about 40 minutes, my battery died, so kind of messed that one up. I'm gonna share some of that, and I'll just talk my way through this thing. So, first thing this morning, I cut that template, and that's actually a template, an unwrap of the top surface, and I thought it'd be close enough to use for the bottom, but I had some trouble actually with not the fabrics necessarily, but the peel ply. I use a Teflon coated glass, and it has zero drapability. It doesn't conform at all to shapes, and so it didn't really land where I wanted it to land. So I'll need to cut the other template for the bottom tool. Here's 1K carbon. I'm cutting it on a 45. The wing section is all on a 45. And the interesting thing about this plane is that right at the end of that wing, right about the center of the body, it turns to 0-90 and goes up to the nose, which is it's pretty cool. It kind of does both things that you need all in one piece. So this plane is going to be light. I'm trying to make it light, and I'm trying to get a handle on the spar and the loads and the way that the spar works on one of these swept wings. And I spent a bit of time yesterday kind of digging into that, and that until I know the spar layout, I can't cut cores, and so everything gets shifted around based on where the spars go. But I think I got a handle on it now, so I'll start cutting cores in the morning and possibly be able to get the cores in tomorrow. I'm cutting some breather here. I use a scribe tool to go around my templates to mark Sharpie marks, and I just cut on the Sharpie if I want like an offset of the template. So here's the start of the layup. All the fabric I kind of put in dry and got it into place. Well, I don't want to forget. So somebody had asked me about adhesion with the paint system. So since somebody asked me about that, I felt like I needed to scuff it down and acetone wipe it. So I ended up scuffing it down. There was a couple nibs here and there, like from seemed like some solvent pop in the paint, and that was about it. But I went ahead and sanded any rough stuff out and smoothed out any like areas that had some overspray, and then scuffed it with Scotch-Brite and then wiped it all with acetone. And then this first layer that's going in is the glass veil. It's just e-glass. It's like 2 ounce. It's maybe 2.3 ounce. It's a tight weave glass veil. And its only purpose is to back up the paint. If you put, coincidentally, the next layer of fabric is also a fine fabric, but it's not as good as this glass for backing up the paint, and this keeps the paint from chipping. It keeps the paint from having to bridge over, a larger woven fabric. So that's all this is for. And so when you saw me cutting it, the fiber orientation means nothing on this. It's really non-structural. So the first layer, getting it in here. And just trying to get it flat with no bubbles, no voids, and just make it as clean as possible. This video is like, I think it's sped up. It's 2 times. It's sped up twice as fast. So it's like 200%, I guess. And I won't talk you through the whole thing. But I'm gonna put this glass veil in, and then I'm going to come in after that, and I'm using 1K plain weave carbon, and that's a 96 GSM fabric. So my goal for this plane is to make it, I won't say as light as possible, but it's on the lighter end for a DS plane for sure. I could probably break it pretty easily if I pushed it flying, but I'm curious to know how strong it is in bending primarily. That's the thing I'm trying to learn. And I have some people or somebody that has some like finite element tools that's willing to work with me on it, but I can't get it done like in the next day or so. And it's possible I might be able to fly this plane the middle of next week. So I'm gonna at least try to shoot for that, meaning I'll have to cut cores tomorrow and maybe get the cores in, and then what's tomorrow? Friday, and then Saturday I would be putting in all of the caps and inner skin, and then Sunday I'd put all the internals in. Oh, that's really pushing it. And then Monday I would try to get closed out. That doesn't give me much time at all. If I close out on Monday, I can't open it until Tuesday, and then I'd have to do an overnight gear install. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe I can shave off some time somewhere in there. Anyway, so this is going to get a 1K plain weave outer skin, and then it's going to get a Divinicel. I'm going to machine that down. It's not Divinicel, it's Roacell. I think it's a Roacell. I thought it was a 50. Gosh, I don't remember what it is. It's a lightweight Roacell. It's white. Anyway, sorry about that. I'm going to machine it down to where it's about, 60 thousandths, maybe 1.5 millimeters or somewhere in there. And get those cores in. And then the spar system is just, it's crazy how these are, or how this one's going to be, but there's all kinds of different webs going on here or there. So I'll make it light, and we'll see how it goes. I just want to kind of learn how it flies. And then there's going to be some vertical stabs going on the wingtips, but those are going to be like attached in the field. So I'm going to make a couple different sizes, start out with the big ones, the training wheels, and see how it goes, and then I'll go to the smaller set if everything works out, and then at some point take them off and fly it without them if we get that far. This 1K carbon going in. So back to the glass veil. I run the paint up on the flange, and then I run the glass veil up onto the flange. That's the only material that goes on the flange of the tool, and I've measured it many times, and it ends up being, it's like 3 to 5 thousandths by the time I sand it all down. I sand most of it down. Any excess resin or bumps or anything that ends up on the flange gets sanded flat before closeout. And when I sand it flat, I'm trying not to burn through the paint. And most of the glass is still intact, but every now and then I'll get into the paint and I'll kind of stop when I start seeing paint. But it gets sanded really thin, and so I've taken some of that material and mic'd it, and it's like 5 thousandths, I'll say. So I'm adding 10 thousandths to the thickness of the wing when I build one of these, because of that. And I can make that up by adding something that thick to the back ledge, but I usually don't. This one has a thick trailing edge anyways. It's we had a little bit of a miscommunication, I think, and so this one is ending up with a 50 thousandths thick trailing edge, which was the target for the big one. So this one's going to have a pretty thick trailing edge for the size of the wing. So I'm not sweating that little bit of an amount, but I just thought I'd mention it. That's how I build these. If I put the paint and the glass up on the flange, and I end up trimming that back down to the mold edge, what happens sometimes is it can get delammed from the tool prematurely, and resin ends up going between the mold and the paint, and it's gross. I mean, you can't really get rid of it. You can't sand it hardly, and it's hard to fix. So I just keep that whole parting line and leading edge completely sealed off by leaving that paint and just that thin layer of glass there. The carbon goes right up to the parting line and not up onto the flange at all. But I do try to get it right perfect on that edge. So any excess, like stray fibers or anything that end up on the parting, on the flange, that gets sanded off in that process I was talking about before closeout. I just knock anything big or that's not supposed to be on that flange gets knocked flat before I close it out. So sometimes carbon gets up on there too. Trying to figure out what I'm doing here. Oh, I'm mixing up some Cabacil, because right at the nose, it's kind of a really tight radius, and I could tell the fabric was having a little bit of trouble staying in there. So I made some thickened epoxy. I just used some Cabacil and mixed up it like mayo consistency, and just brush a little bit right in the tip of the nose, like maybe 3/4 of an inch or so back, just to give a little bit of room for the fabric to kind of drape over it and not have to be so tight in there. On the vacuum lines, I have 2 vacuum lines. If you look about center span or mid span at the top of the picture, I can't see the bottom of the picture because this little thing on my phone's blocking it, so maybe you can see both. But mid span on the outside, on the leading edge side, you can see where I removed the tape. The tape that I used to cover up all the alignment pin, the bushings, when I sprayed paint, I removed a couple pieces of it only in the one spot, and it's the mid span one. And I have a vacuum line, a 3/8 OD vacuum line, and that pushes up into the 3/8 bushing, and I pretty much flush the top of the tube pretty much flush with the flange, so it's pushed all the way up into the top of the mold, and then at the bottom it's wrapped with bag sealant tape. So that's how I pull a vacuum on these. It's just the easiest way to do it. I have other ways to, hook vacuum lines to the tools, but I just like that way. It's like kind of easy. So I have 2 vacuum lines on these parts, and they're one on each side. So I'm trimming the next piece of carbon at the nose because I kind of learned from that first piece that I was overcutting a slight bit when I was using the template. Again, this gets unfolded into the tool, and then it just gets flushed out right at the edge there. So this is the only thing going in the mold right now is the glass and this 1K carbon. And I'll put some Teflon coated glass on top of that for a release ply, and then I'm using a breather cloth on top of that, and then I'm using I use a Stretchlon 200. It's a stretchable bag film. The bags for these wings it's a 60-inch wide folded bag, so it's when you unfold it, it ends up 120 inches wide, so it's 10 feet wide. And I'm just cutting like about 7 feet off the roll and then unfolding it, and that's big enough to get this, because this plane is 70-inch span, or the actual model is 70-inch span. The molds are 75 inches wide, but it's also 75 inches long, so it's like basically you need like an 80 or 90-inch square to cover these, at least. So that's that. Let's see what else. So the rest of the holes, the rest of the where the tape is over all the alignment pin holes on the back side of the molds, I put more tape, and I use like a fiber reinforced tape, like strapping tape, so it can't get sucked up into the hole. I have some little silicone plugs that I use for that as well, but I found that every now and then, unless I really prep the tool on the back with epoxy and sand it smooth and everything, they don't seal as well as the tape does. And so I use green tape on the surface, and this is a dry, tooling board surface with no sealer on it, which is not ideal. I think I should have sealed those up, but I put that on, and then I work that down really good, and then I put a piece of strapping tape over it, so just to reinforce it so it can't get sucked into the hole and pop. So it looks like this one's about done, and I know that right about when I was finished, I was talking to myself for a long time after this, but I had a little bit of a process I was sharing about how I was doing the Teflon coated glass and all of that stuff. So I did a time lapse for the bottom tool, which you'll see some of it. So I cut the Teflon coated glass the same dimensions as I cut these layers of carbon here. And so it just goes to the edge. If I cut it wide, if I cut it long onto the flange, it ends up bridging right at the leading edge, and I end up with bubbles. So once you pull the bag down, it doesn't stretch at all. And so I've cut that exactly to fit right there, and then I cut another piece that goes onto the flange, but it comes back and overlaps the parting line out of that corner, and overlaps it about a quarter inch or so, half inch. And it's taped around the perimeter so it can't move. And then the breather goes over that. So tomorrow I'll do a video of like unbagging all this. So I'm just working the resin in. I was working the resin in. Once it's all completely wet out, I just go over it really good and work it all in. Here's the bottom one. I grabbed some of that Cabasil, already put it in the nose there. I got super heavy with the resin on this one. I poured too much on that right side over there. So I tried to kept stealing it from over there as much as I could to get it distributed. By the time I got this in, it was okay, but you know, I didn't need any more resin than what was in there. So got both pieces of fabric in there and wet it out good, roll it out good. And here's that Teflon coated glass that's put in just right to the edge, same as the carbon. And this is the piece I was having trouble with just because of the template I used. And then here's those strips that go up onto the flange, and they kind of come back and overlap what's in there, so they can't get stuck. Here's the peel ply, or I'm sorry, the breather. And then I add some more Teflon coated glass over the vacuum ports and more breather over the vacuum ports. And I pull this bag on there all the way around. Get it stuck down. I think I'll go over, pull a vac here. And then I'm just checking it. I go around this thing like 20 times, rolling it, rolling the leading edge, checking for leaks. And I probably over an hour, I'm just like running around this thing. Because I had like a micro leak I couldn't find. So it needed a lot of attention. So that's that. They're in the bag, top and bottom. And we'll open that up tomorrow.